Thanks for listening again to the Clive Barker podcast, the only podcast dedicated to the imagination of Clive Barker. We appreciate you subscribing and rating us. In this episode, 185, Jose and I'm Ryan, we come back to the Marvel Hellraiser comics, book 17, 18, and 19.
Hey, welcome back. This is episode 185, Marvel Hellraiser Part 6. And we're going to talk about those Hellraiser comics from 1992. As usual, I am Jose.
And I'm Ryan.
So, welcome. So we're going back into the fold for those Hellraiser comics, right, Ryan?
Yeah. So here we're going to be talking about books 17, 18, and 19. So we're getting close to the end because this run ended at book 20. Plus, there are a few specials and
right, like the summer special and the holiday special, and so I think those, along with issue number 20, will make for a nice part 7.
Plus the Hellraiser 3 adaptation.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. Most people forget about that, right?
Yeah,
it wasn't that good.
Oh really? I don't know if I ever read it because I was like, I've seen the movie, I don't need that. So it'll be a first time for me.
I'll see if I can dig out a copy of that because I'm not sure I have a copy of that with me, but we'll figure that out. All right, so here's a bit of an intro from an interview by Dave Hughes for a magazine called Meltdown Number 6, January 92. And of course, this kind of follows into what we're going to talk about because they're going to introduce, after the Devil's Brigade, they're introducing a new ongoing story that's about the Harrowers, right? Yeah. And so here's Clive Barker saying, with the Hellraiser comic books, there were too many stories about people who got boxes, open boxes, and were taken to hell. The answer seemed to be to come up with a counter mythology that would allow people to be saved from hell. Suppose there were forces that were dedicated to the undoing of what the Cenobites do. It would be a force for release and redemption, which would be the equal of Leviathan, with foot soldiers that would have the power to enter hell and steal back the damned. Morte Mame is her name, basically the dead mother, or if you prefer, the mother of death. She was created with 3 other people who I must mention, Fred Vicarel, Anna Miller, and Malcolm Smith. Morte Mame has her Harrowers, the Harrowers of Hell, which recalls an old Christian image, Christ's harrowing of hell after its resurrection. And without giving too much away, the Harrowers are empowered to claim the dead, which is a rather tricky business.
Yeah, I remember this article. I remember that interview. I think I read that at the time that it came out.
Nice.
That got me interested in the Hellraiser comic again, because at the time I was thinking, well, you know, this stuff isn't written by Clive Barker, so I wasn't reading them.
So, but this one is actually, it's funny thing is that these 3 people that he mentions, he worked with them for like a year, coming up with the idea for the Harrowers. And
then they kind of ran with it, and they were a team, right? Called like Zinc Inc. or something like that, right?
Yes, Zinc Inc. And they had another guy, a 4th member. I forgot his name, McNall Segal, I think. So yeah, here it is. Okay, so Anna Miller, Fred Vicarel, Malcolm Smith were the Zinc Inc. team with McNally Segal. So apparently he got left out, but in one of the comic books they say, and the 4th member, McNally Segal. So yeah, I guess I don't know why they keep him out of most of these like interviews, but there it is.
And the ink is INK, not like incorporated.
No. And Zinc, I think it's the name of the kitty cat that the Harrowers have.
Oh, yeah, right. Of course.
Yeah. So,
that's cool.
Right. So issue 17, you want to get into it?
Yeah, so the first one, Taste the Darkness, with written by Joe Rozum and Bo Hampton, and art by Bo Hampton.
Yeah. Really like this one. It's about a young photographer. I think her name is Daphne. She's kind of one of those people who has a taste for solving puzzles, and she ends up meeting a Cenobite. And it's a kind of a weird guy, right? He's got fingers coming out of his forehead.
Yeah, and I liked this. I liked this particular story because it tackles something that comes up a lot in Hellraiser. It's like what happens when, and everybody has a different answer, but it's like, what happens when somebody opens a puzzle and they don't know what they're doing?
Right. And then more than that, it's a quirky little story, as it almost makes it seem like the Cenobite's pride is insulted by the easiness with which Daphne solved the puzzle. I mean,
yeah,
it's like she didn't do it right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like she didn't do the ritual. She just bought the box for $2.50 from like a junk shop, and then she solved it in 5 minutes. That's what she says.
Yeah.
And the Cenobite looks so depressed when he hears about it. He's like, oh no. He puts his head in his hands. It's like, really?
Yeah.
I think John Rozum, I think he's written some of the best stories in this anthology series, in my opinion.
I agree.
And the artwork is really cool. Like you said, Bo Hampton. I have a page from this story, actually. I owned a page where you see them having a drink. Yeah, when she's holding the glass and he's like sitting on her couch with his head in his hands.
Oh, yeah.
I own that page of original art. It's I like the idea that a Cenobite can alter the way a box works to make it harder.
Yeah, that's cool. There were, every once in a while, there were little things that they tweaked or added to the mythology like that.
Yeah. So we're used to thinking about the strict rules about taking someone back after they open the box, and they play around with that a little bit in this story when World Jack, that's the name of the Cenobite. Yeah. He says, well, you solved this so easily. I kind of feel bad about taking you back. Not sure you'd be worthy of becoming a Cenobite, but we won't use you as sculpting material either because it would be a waste of talent. So I'll just make the box harder and go. And then he says, well, I can't leave without something, right? So he ends up taking Daphne's artistic photos back with him.
And the neat thing is then he's leaving it up to her, which is something that I always appreciate. Whenever they do this in a Hellraiser story, when they say it's up to somebody has to make the choice to go to hell. And so now she knows what she's up against, and he's giving her a more difficult puzzle box. And it's going to be, if she goes back, it's going to be on her terms. She's going to know what she's getting into. And
right.
I think at the end she looks at it and says, "Oh, this doesn't look so hard." It's like, oh boy, knowing everything that she knows, should she be doing this right now?
She doesn't even bat an eyelash, right? As soon as the Cenobite disappears, she's left with a box in her hand and immediately sits down and says, "This doesn't look so hard." Yeah. So I like the fact that World Jack takes back her photos as an artist's work. It kind of hints
piece of her soul. Yeah.
Yeah, hence that it may contain a piece of the artist's work contains a piece of their soul, which is kind of a romantic idea that I thought was interesting. He knows he's going to be punished for not bringing her back, but he's like, what's the worst that can happen? I guess I'm a Cenobite. They got to torture me, Yeah. So, yeah. But like you said, it's interesting that he gives her the freedom to, now she knows what she's up against, and so there she goes. She's gonna taste the darkness. Yeah. And is this like a line from Lord of Illusions, right? It's like, taste the darkness, the more
it's been waiting for you.
It's been waiting for you.
Yeah, and it's interesting because that's 3 years earlier than Lord of Illusions.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, good point. Good point. Is that part of Lost Souls, the story? I don't know. I don't remember.
Right. We would take some digging to figure out where that first came from.
Right. So I also like the fact that here they mention what the Cenobite can actually offer someone. He says he can give her some unfulfilled desire, something people don't expect to get out of life on their own. But it seems like she's pretty happy with her life, so she passes on it, and it's like, okay. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think I'm fine for now. But then, of course, at the end, she's opening the box again. Yeah. So cool little story. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 6 pages. It's a really short story, but it's pretty sweet.
Yeah, and the page count, the overall page count of these Hellraiser comics has gone down by like 10 pages, right? They think they used to be 64, and now he says they're 48, which I guess doesn't include like the covers,
forwards, and yeah. Well, they were making them more frequent, so And the comic was on its way out. I mean, in this one, I think they mentioned something about, hey, you know, after issue number 20, we're going to change editors, and we're going to get this guy, and he's going to pick it up after issue 20. And the poor guy had no idea, probably, that they were going to cancel the comic after issue 20.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess he never got to edit that. So the Harrowing, Part 1, Resurrection. That's the second story and last story in this comic book.
Right. And this is really interesting, and you can kind of see Clive Barker's fingers in this storyline, right? This Morte Mame having insects, these flies come out of her that, you know, once the flies connect with somebody or bite them or get swallowed or whatever, then they lead them back to her.
Mm-hmm. So this picks up where book 16 left off with that story about Little Moon, the story called This I Saw. And so in that story, we saw Morte Mame was left entombed by a Leviathan. And like you said, some flies come out of her. And this image, for me, the opening splash page for the comic book, it just reminds me a lot of Celestine in the Tabula Rasa Tower.
Totally,
I think I mentioned this before, but this is 92, and Magica came out in 1991. So I'm wondering how much they were like revisiting that visual idea from Clive Barker, because
sure, yeah, they probably didn't know, but Clive did. You know, he it seems like this happens a lot with him, that when he's obsessed with a particular idea or, you know, a thing that he's in the middle of, it finds its way into other things.
Yeah, so here's a powerful bound woman, very symbolic of how female power is seen as dangerous through the ages, and how women have been always kind of kept down, and, you know, powerful women have been like put away and like, okay, yeah, whatever, stay in your corner. And this is what happens here with Morte Mame. She's been captive for hundreds of years. And so the way that these people, the new Harrowers, are found by the flies, it's interesting. And although some of them are a little too quick, like there's one that's one woman is sitting on death row, and one of the flies flies into the priest's mouth when he's having coffee and telling her, you know, hey, you have to confess your sins and you have to repent. You're going to death row. And then he takes a sip of his coffee and swallows a fly, and he kind of chokes on it and dies.
Yeah.
And the next minute, she's out of prison on her way to Joplin, Missouri, hitchhiking, wearing the priest's clothes. And I'm like, yeah, that's okay. I mean, that's kind of like...
It's a little harder than that to get out of prison.
It's a little harder than that, right? Yeah. It's like a woman would just walk out of jail wearing a priest's clothes. It's kind of, I don't think so, especially not out of death row. But, you know, hey, we have to relax. It's just a comic book, right? Yeah. It's like MST3K, you know, it's just a show.
Yeah.
But so that's cool. And they all meet at Legs Benedict's Egg Museum in Joplin, Missouri.
Yeah, right. What a crazy premise. You know, but I love this Harrower storyline. I mean, as much as equal to how much I didn't like the what was
Devil's
that
Brigade.
The Devil's Brigade. Yeah, I really like the Harrowers, and as I was reading these Harrower stories, I started thinking about, why didn't they make a movie out of this?
Good question.
I think a Hellraiser sequel about the Harrowers would be awesome.
Yeah, I agree. That would give us the flip side of the coin, right? That could have been interesting. I mean, we've definitely seen the Cenobites. I think the idea is, I think some of the Hellraiser fans could probably be a little reluctant to accept that, because look what happened. And I know that this has to do with the fact it was kind of low budget and didn't have Doug Bradley, but when Judgment showed an angel at the end, and I guess spoilers if you haven't seen it, but some fans really hated that angel, and I don't know if it was just about the execution or whatever.
Yeah. Because
Scarlet Gospels does have angels.
Right, it does, and they're Clive Barker angels, so you know they are flawed like people,
right?
You know, and they're tired of their immortality. And
so, like, I read that quote from Clive Barker from that Meltdown magazine article. I think it's interesting to show a flip side, that to every action there's a reaction, right? To every action there's a consequence. So if there's a Leviathan, there should be someone who opposes Leviathan. Yeah. And not just be mankind in general, but just be like an actual force equal to Leviathan.
And
in this case,
she calls him her brother.
Yeah, she does at one point. Yeah, Mortemame calls Leviathan her brother.
Mm-hmm.
So, as another thing I want to bring up is that when they reach Legs Benedict's Egg Museum, uh, it's supposed to have been the same spot where Little Moon witnessed the Harrowers and, Mortemame's tomb and all that. So there's a lot of symbology about the fact that special consecrated place has stayed there throughout hundreds of years, and it's become an Indian kind of temple, a sacred place. But then all of a sudden, it's become a roadside attraction for like this goofy egg museum with an egg with long legs with stockings and stuff, and she has lipstick on her face and stuff.
Right. But at the same, the biggest ball of twine in Minnesota.
Right, and it's like, oh man, it's like how Native American stuff has been appropriated, and kind of distorted a little bit and turned into like something that's not what it was originally, and there's a third layer of symbolism here, which is, of course, it's an egg. So it's a symbol of fertility. It's a symbol of femininity, right?
Yeah.
So a cool idea, the whole thing about Legs Benedict's Egg Museum being also Mortemame's tomb, I thought. So who are these 6 Harrowers, Ryan?
Yeah, so we've got, of course, the lady who was on death row. There are twins, right? Twin women.
Yeah. Vera Wyshak is on the death row. She's a black lady. And the twins, they're British twins, I think. Their name is Lavinia and Lucinda.
Yeah. And one of them seems like gung-ho, and the other one always just wants to leave. Yeah.
There's one guy who is found by Mortemame working at a kill animal shelter. And he's just shoveling dead kittens into a furnace. Like, oh my God.
That took me aback, that, seeing that. And I read this accidentally the last time when we were recording and for Hellraiser comics. And that took me aback of like, it's hard to tell at first that they're dead, right? So it just looks like some guy shoveling a bunch of kittens and puppies into a furnace. It's like, what is going on? But then you kind of work it out, after
they've been euthanized. Yeah. He's working at a kill shelter, and he doesn't like his job, I think, and he's just kind of shoveling those. And he's like, I'm gonna quit. And then he sees a little kitten that's alive, and it's like, hey, little kitten, and the kitten eats one of the flies. And if you ever had cats, I mean, this is something that sometimes happens.
Yeah.
They will, if a fly gets too close to a cat, sometimes they'll just jump out and like eat it.
Yeah.
And so that little cat becomes Zinc, an instrument of Mortemame. And the guy who's working at that shelter, his name is Winston Gage. He's like a big guy. He's kind of like a Lenny from Of Mice and Men, but he's not.
Right.
But he's smart, and he's just a very chill, kind of laid back kind of guy, but he's an enormous guy called Winston Gage. And then there's another guy, I think his name is Dublin Morse, and is he a tattoo artist, I think?
Right, yeah, I think that's what it is. And he's like riding a motorcycle, right?
I think so. Let me check that.
And his motorcycle can drive by itself and guide you to places?
That guy is Ron Ringwood. Oh. Okay, so that guy's Ron Ringwood, the guy with the bike. He's doing like a tattoo on someone, and apparently one of the flies bites him, and he instead of making the dragon between the shoulder blades for this biker dude, he ends up just making an egg and writing Joplin, Missouri on it.
Yeah, that guy's mad.
I was like, hey, is it done? How does it look? It looks perfect. And he's like, you asshole, you tattooed me with an egg.
Yeah.
And he just gets on his bike and takes off to Joplin, Missouri.
Yeah.
And then and he actually meets Vera Wyshak on the way there. She's still wearing the priest's clothes. He gives her a ride.
Yeah.
So the funny thing is how the twins, Lucinda and Lavinia, they're actually touring America. They're going on a trip, and they're like, oh, let's find an interesting spot. Let's just close our eyes and point to a spot on the map. And then a fly lands on the map, and one of the sisters kind of kills her and leaves a stain on the map. And they're like, hey, let's go there.
Bullseye.
So,
yeah.
Bullseye. Oh yeah, and also Winston Gage, when he finds little Zinc, he discovers Zinc has a license, a little license thing that says he belongs to someone in Joplin. That's why he gets to Joplin
Oh, wow.
from St. Louis, Missouri. So and they introduce. I don't think this is a new character, right? The General. I think we've seen this guy before.
Yeah, and he's really gung ho about stopping the Harrowers.
Right. So he mentions that there's the Lucky Six, which is actually Merkova, who has appeared before. She's like Pinhead's girlfriend.
Yeah.
There's a guy with really long arms and he's really short legs. His name is Turpus. There's another guy called Pravis. I think he's kind of like, he looks like a Cenobite cowboy kind of guy. There's another guy called Fulgar, and he's like this monster with long hair, and he's going to show up in another story in the next issue. There's one guy that has like a full body leather suit, like a gimp suit, and then he's got these like knives coming out of his forehead. I think his name is Carnex. And there's another Cenobite called Freight, and he's got this like grid-like thing on his face.
Yeah.
So those are the Lucky Six, and
yeah, right.
We get to see this amazing assembly of Cenobites. There's probably thousands and thousands of them.
Yeah.
And the General is like, he's like a rock star. He's got like a stage, and he's like.
And all these Cenobites in the audience are yelling like, "Let sadism guide you. Bring them back for public tortures. Pierce some flesh for us."
That's funny.
Yeah.
Let sadism guide you. Okay, so he wants these Lucky Six to, like you said, rid themselves of this little disturbance of the Harrowers. And in the meantime, so all these six people, Ron Ringwood, Marty Sevenbirds, who's the descendant of Little Moon, and Dublin Morse, who's like a projectionist, I think. Mm-hmm. He's actually projecting the movie The Fly when a fly lands on the lens of the projector.
That's cool.
So that's interesting. That's a funny moment. So they all meet in
at the Egg Museum.
At the Egg Museum, okay, and they're like, "Oh, okay. Oh, you got here too. Oh, I don't know why we're here." And then there's this guy who kind of gives them a tour, and they meet the Bunny Benedict, who's this old lady who runs the museum.
Yeah. And
all of a sudden, there's an earthquake, and there's a crack that appears. So the egg cracks, right? Yeah. And they discover that there's an opening. The old monument cracks, and there's these stairs that lead down into a cave. So they decide to go down the stairs, right?
Yeah, and they're heading down towards the tomb of Morte Mame, and mm-hmm. they find the puzzle that they're supposed to solve, and all the bodies of the people who were tricked by Leviathan into cutting off their own hands and stuff. They thought that would help them solve the puzzle.
Yeah, to feed the lantern that fed on human flesh.
Yeah. And
so they could have light.
Right, yeah. And so now that it's like, we don't want to end up like them. We got to solve this puzzle.
And they do. And they each get into their little niche where the other guys were supposed to go. The thing is, they were supposed to put their hands and feet on the walls, and because they burnt their hands and feet on that lantern to be able to read what the puzzle said, and so they ended up getting stuck there because they're like, oh no, we can't actually like put our hands and feet in here, so they tricked us. But okay, so that these guys do it, and they get into the chamber. The chamber starts spinning around, and they get to see Morte Mame. And the funny thing is, she appears differently to every single one of these people.
Yeah, really interesting. The different aspects of the goddess.
Mm-hmm. And so they're given these weapons. So they're given these weapons that they shall use to arm themselves against Leviathan and his forces. And if you've read the books of the Damned, companions to these comic books, you will know that there was one of the issues where they mentioned the Blades of the Boros Uatu. And that was the name that they gave in that comic book to these particular weapons that serve Morte Mame, right?
Yeah. And so it was a nice callback to see them, see those come back.
Mm-hmm. They're weapons charged with Morte Mame's life force. And there's like a saber, and there's a sword, and there's a
big axe,
an axe,
yeah.
A dagger, and I think a whip.
It's like a lasso, or I guess it is a whip, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's like a lasso, and there's also a boomerang,
Yeah.
a blade boomerang. So I think Winston Gage gets the axe. Vera Weishak gets the boomerang. Seven Birds gets one of the swords. Ron Ringwood gets the saber that has spikes on the the handle, and the twins get the whip, right? And
so I was always curious about the twins. Like, is only one of them chosen, and the other one's just sort of tagging along?
I think they're both chosen.
Okay, do they both have powers?
You can consider that since they're twins, they're probably clones of each other, so they're basically the same person, right?
Yeah, right. I guess.
And so Zinc is there with them, and Morte Mame also gives these two twins a little. It looks like a Cupid, but his name is Ovid, and I kid you not, like this guy's little superpower is his farts confuse the Cenobites.
I know. Yeah. How did they come up with that? That kind of sounds like something that Clive Barker might have come up with, though.
Yeah. So he the little flying Cupid thing says, "Oh, Morte Mame made me miasmic, and so my farts confuse the Cenobites."
Yeah.
And
okay.
And they're also pretty stinky because everybody's like, "Ew, what's that smell?"
Yeah.
So great. I guess the Harrowers headquarters will always smell like farts.
Yeah.
So all right. So once they do this, it's basically like while they're downstairs in the cave, upstairs. I don't know how they do it, but the Cenobites open a portal into our reality, apparently on their own, and the general sends the Lucky Six to kill the Harrowers. And
it's because when they free Morty Mame, then that automatically also opens up a summons to the Cenobites.
Right. They solve the puzzle, right? Yeah. So they find this out because Winston Gage discovers that he can see through the eyes of the little Zinc kitten.
Yeah.
And the Zinc kitten went upstairs, and that's why he sees the Cenobites. And Murkova picks him up, and it's like, she's gonna like. She says something really funny and cheesy, like, the innocence of a little kitten is so rich.
Yeah.
And then I think it's Karnex that tells her, Murkova, don't bother with her pet. So
I can feel them. They're close.
Yeah. So this guy, we get a good glimpse in this splash page of all the Cenobites. And I have to say, one of the Lucky Six, I think his name is Freight. Freight is the guy that has like a Hannibal Lecter-like mask, right? And he's got hooks on his head. And
he looks a little bit like Pinhead.
Yeah, except he's got like hooks coming out of his
and he's got weird
face.
like knife blades coming out of his torso.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But to me, the coolest and the most weird and outlandish one is the Turpus, because he's got it's like his head has been opened and re-sewn back together, and then he's got these gigantic looking arms. It seems like he doesn't really know what to do with them, so he's always like just resting his arms on his head.
Yeah, like he's taking a nap or something.
Yeah. Okay, so the Harrowers climb up the stairs in the Egg Museum, and they confront the Lucky Six, and they were told by Morte Mame that, hey, the only way to kill a Cenobite is dismemberment. So, that's what they do.
Yeah, they chop him to bits, and the Cenobites, I think Murkova manages, she gets injured really badly, but she manages to kidnap, was her name Birdie?
A bunny. Bunny, yeah.
That's right. They kidnap.
Murkova loses her arms within like seconds of the Harrowers coming into the room. I think it's Winston Gage with a big axe that goes and says like, oh, let's just, let's start chopping up. And
right.
Just cuts both her arms before she can do anything.
Yeah.
And somehow she still manages to grab Bunny with her like horse teeth and drags her to hell. And of course, the Harrowers are like, hey, we have to save her, because that's what we do. We're the Harrowers. We're going to go into hell and save people. So that's going to be their hook from now on. And They get together really, really fast, though, as a team, don't they? I mean,
Yeah.
I know they didn't have a lot of issues to make the story go a little further, but it seems like they should have gone through some challenges first and learn how to work as a team, that sort of thing.
Right.
In here, it's just like, all right, we're the Harrowers, let's do it.
Yeah. Yeah, but it was kind of cool. I mean, it's nice to see the Cenobites sort of put off balance, by these, because the Cenobites are usually like in control, and the people don't know what they're doing and don't know what they're getting into.
Right. And they also get some superpowers given to them, right? Like Ron Ringwood, he's like this a masochistic guy, and he's like, he wears leather and he has all the sorts of earrings, and his superpower is that he actually can heal super fast. And he says, not bad. The only thing I'm going to miss is having scabs to pick at, which, ew, but okay.
Yeah, so he can't heal all of his teammates.
Yeah. Winston Gage can see through Zink's eyes. Vera Wyshak,
and he can
her
also
blood.
swap places with Zink, too.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's why he can teleport to wherever he is and swap places. So that's how he gets the drop on Markova.
Yeah.
Lucinda and Lavinia get that Ovid little guy, the flying Cupid thing that farts, confuses the Cenobites. Vera Wyshak, her blood is acid to Cenobites, and also her spit is poisonous to them. And what else? Let me see. Marty Sevenbirds can throw lightning.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, he's Little Moon's descendant. So yeah. And of course, once he sees, the general sees the chopped up bits of the Cenobites come back through the portal, and he's like, "Whoa, these fools have declared war on hell!" So that's going to be the thing from now on. It's going to be the general, and I think the general was also a part of the Harrowers comic book because there was a 6-issue miniseries, I think. So
yeah, right. Did we? I can't remember if we. I know we did a series of episodes about the Pinhead comic, or maybe one.
We did,
one episode about that, but I can't remember if we did the Harrowers.
I can't think of it too, especially because I got up at 6 a.m. to record this, so I'm still kind of tired.
Yeah.
But so at the end you have an afterword where Clive Barker talks about the Zink team and how they have written a book devoted entirely to the Harrowers, which will be published in the early part of 93. It says, will the Harrowers flourish or perish? Only the coming tales will tell. But from now on, you may be certain that the devil's tune will not be the only one echoing through hell. Heroes and heroines are coming, their hearts beating to a drum as ancient as Leviathan and as powerful.
Yeah.
So he wrote this in Los Angeles in July of 92. Some cool pinups in this comic book. There's like some clown pinups, which I think
the clown
are interesting. I would like
girl with the scissors and
yeah. I would like to see a clown Cenobite. Just don't make him a juggalo. But
God.
Right?
Yes.
Anyway, so that was issue 17. On to issue 18 and the coming of the Harrowers. Hell's hour is at an end. What's going to happen? So cool cover here by Alex Ross. Alex Ross, if you don't know, it's a really awesome artist, and he's made like some really landmark masterpieces, like a miniseries called Marvels, and which is basically the Marvel universe as seen through the eyes of a photographer, of a newspaper photographer that would cover all those like alien invasions and the Fantastic Four. Yeah. So all through the decades, and he gets to see like the mutants being like outcasts, and when Galactus came to Earth. So it's like all these like super awesome Marvel stories seen through the eyes of like just the general guy who was covering them for the news. And he also made one for DC called Kingdom Come, which takes place in the future. Like Superman is retired, he's living underground in like this kind of fortress of solitude, and like Wonder Woman is kind of getting a little older too, and Green Lantern, Hal Jordan, is like this guy with white hair, and he lives in like a satellite created by his ring that orbits Earth.
Oh wow!
And so there's a new generation of superheroes that don't have an ethics code as these old superheroes used to have. So the world is a mess. There's like all sorts of like supervillains and superheroes clashing and people dying, and it's like these guys decide it's time to come back with the old superhero guard and teach these young whippersnappers how to actually behave like superheroes.
Huh.
You know, that's cool. And this was Alex Ross's first work for Marvel, so this is like a real young Alex Ross, and yeah, I'm glad he started out in a Hellraiser comic.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, and of course, a lot of people don't realize, of course, that Wachowski's, also started with Hellraiser comics and Nightbreed comics.
Yeah, isn't that awesome? Yeah. So, issue 18 starts with a story. Before that, the intro, they announced the Barkerverse. So, what was the Barkerverse? It was the Ecto Kid and Hokum and X and all those like comic books that came out.
Yeah, and then so it seems like this is kind of like you take all of that, and plus you've got the Eclipse comics, of the adaptations of the Books of Blood were out at that time, and it was a huge time for Clive Barker comics. And
the Razorline universe or Barkerverse. I don't, I mean, there's two names for that, but I guess you can call it whatever you want.
Yeah.
Some cool pinups here. One of them has Chenard, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Look, that's really.
I like that one, and he's.
Yeah. See Chenard.
Is that Chenard changing? Like, is that him with all the barbed wire around him underneath?
It certainly hints to it, right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't look like Ken Cranham at all. But
no.
Right.
It's more just kind of a figure, but.
Yeah, it's kind of a generic pinup there. But then we have another one with Pinhead that's really, really nice. Someone wrote 666 in the corner there.
Oh, I didn't notice that. Huh.
Yeah. So the first story is not the continuation of the Harrowers. It's a standalone story called Love is a Many Splendored Thing. And so this was written by Erik Saltzgaber and Mike Hoffman. So the main character is called Ezule, and she wants to solve a mystery, right? She kills a man to get possession of a lament configuration and meets a Cenobite called Draleba.
Yeah. So this is sort of a reverse of all the other stories where people don't know what they're getting into. And in this case, she really knows what she's getting into, and she really, really wants it. And this sort of pathetic Cenobite, won't give it to her, right? He's falling in love with her, and he doesn't want anything bad to happen to her. So and she's getting fed up with him.
This was an underwhelming story to me.
Yeah.
I mean, the Cenobite refuses to take her when she's clearly displaying all the signs of obsession and initiated knowledge of the Cenobites.
Yeah.
He tries to talk her out of joining them because he at one point says, "Do I look happy to you?"
Yeah, right. I know.
I just think these are all out of character and out of place in a Hellraiser story, personally. And they just make Hell out to seem reluctant and bored. And and also Draleba seems to value her appearance more than her desires. He at one point says, "But you're a beautiful woman. You shouldn't want to become a Cenobite and get all scarred and stuff." And I don't know. Draleba comes back to watch her sleep in the middle of the night, and it's like, oh, what is this? Is this like a Twilight meets Hellraiser kind of thing?
Right.
So, and then Draleba also says that Leviathan is flawed. Is flawed because I'm not happy. He is flawed because...
I don't like that part either.
Yeah, and so at the end, Draleba offers to change place with an increasingly frustrated Ezule.
Yeah.
And he says, well, I can take your body and your soul will go into my body, and that way you can go to hell and I'll stay behind. But I'll be suffering because I'm in love with you and I'm going to stay behind.
Yes, jeez.
I'm like, ugh. It's...
Yeah.
I was not happy about this at all. This is a very underwhelming story. But here's something I want to say that I like. I do like the look of Draleba a lot. I like the artwork.
Yeah.
And I wish it just had been put to use in a better story. I mean, the artwork's amazing at times. And it seems very realistic in some panels, especially when it comes to the lighting that the guy made for some of these panels. I mean, Draleba looks amazing with all this blue light and all the shadows. It looks so good. The shadow work is really, really awesome. But
and the woman, she looks really good too.
Yeah, but holy crap, I was so underwhelmed by this story.
Yeah. Right.
And
So
at the end, it's kind of
the
confusing.
Cenobite guy is back in is staying in our world in her body, I guess.
Yeah, but isn't the last panel, isn't that a little weird? Because okay, I'm going to spoil it and say the last couple of panels is Droleba proposing to stay behind in her body and she can go to hell, right? And then he says, "I love you, Isolde. Remember me." And then we see this light as if the portal is closing, and we see this woman left behind, and we hear ha 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 ha. So
I know who's laughing.
Who's laughing, right?
Yeah, I don't get it. Yeah.
Is the Cenobite laughing because he tricked her and he got to keep her body and escape hell, or is that laughter from the woman now in the Cenobite body as she vanishes into the portal?
I read that and I was like, I don't get it. Okay, next story, I guess.
So I guess you can, like, that last one seems to be a little ambiguous in the sense that you can actually at some point think maybe the Cenobite was tricking her all along.
Yeah.
But honestly, I don't think that was the case. But it just opens the door for that interpretation. But I just think it's really like he's a very, very like out of character Cenobite to me.
Or maybe she's laughing because she got what she wanted finally and she doesn't love him. But we knew that from the beginning, so I don't know.
Could be. Yeah. Anyway, so on to Harrowing Part 2, Insurrection, where Lieutenant Worf goes down to the planet with Jean-Luc Picard, and they have to release these people being held together by aliens. No, I'm just joking. Yeah. It's just because Insurrection reminds me of Star Trek Insurrection, but anyway. So the general, right? The general who can give you an online quote. The general turns the dismembered Cenobites into a monster called the Furies. And,
for Gwar fans out there, the Gwar has an enemy called the Flesh Column that is really, really similar to this.
There you go. That was your Gwar moment of the day.
Yeah.
I like the fact that in the story, whenever Leviathan talks, they made his like speech bubbles be little diamonds.
Yeah, that's not consistent throughout the whole series, but it's cool.
Yeah, it's a good idea, I think, visually. I mean, I don't know how that would sound like.
Well, and it's like when Pinhead talks, they usually put it in a black speech bubble.
Yeah. So he makes this weird Cenobite stew, as he says it, with a drop of revenge, 6 parts hatred, and a pinch of expertise.
Yeah.
And he ends up creating this creature that reminds me of the creature at the end of The Thing.
Right. Yeah. It is like that.
And yeah.
He gives it a name, and like Leviathan's like, no, this is what it's called.
Right. He gives it like this weird Latin name. So he said, he was going to say something. Anyway,
my Opacus Farrago.
That's it. Yeah.
And Leviathan says, call it the Fury.
So this is a young Alex Ross working, and this is like his first gig for Marvel. So I'm going to chalk that up to his, I wouldn't call it inexperience, but the composition of some of these pages is a little weird, and they seem more like covers than they look pages sometimes, because it's hard to understand where everyone is in relation to each other and what they're looking at, and they're just striking poses. And it's kind of weird, right? Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I'm the only one who thought this.
No, I did have a little trouble following it also.
Yeah. So like when we're shown lots of people in the same page, they all seem to be doing their own thing. Some of them seem to be in the foreground, others in the background, and most of them are just having like these really intense expressions and poses. And anyway, so.
But the main thing here is that they're supposed to finish freeing Morte Mame, right? Because she's not freed all the way from her prison. She's awake, and she could give them their powers. So they have to finish freeing her. They have to rescue Bunny, right, from
hell. Yes,
and then also to free Morte Mame. Well, I guess that's getting a little bit ahead. So, but then at the same time, they're about to go down into hell, and then this Fury flesh column thing, it's this gigantic, like you said, from It, that gigantic thing made out of all the body parts of the Cenobites.
Right. So what happens here is that they're trying to open up the tomb, like you said, but they know that if they open the tomb, that they will summon the Cenobites again. And it's weird because the Furies come even though they haven't really solved the puzzle yet. But of course, the story picks up just where it left off on the previous issue. But the monster appears and they get really horrified by it, and just weird reactions altogether. Like,
that's it, and everybody's screaming, and it's like you know, I don't think it's an order of magnitude much worse than what they've already seen. I mean, Cenobites by themselves are pretty horrific.
Right, and so anyway, this weird monster. And they say, how can we dismember something that's already in pieces? Which is kind of a point, I guess. Yeah, okay, I get it. But, you guys got your weapons, and some of them are gone. That's true. Like, Murkova leaves on the previous issue, and she takes away a sword stuck on her flank.
Yeah.
But they still have most of their stuff. And so they start hacking away at the Furies, right?
And did Pinhead make this thing? Is that...
No, I think it was the general, right?
Oh, okay. Because I thought that he had said, like, Murkova died and that he would get his revenge. And
no, wait, you're right. It is Pinhead that does it because Leviathan calls him the chosen one. So I think, yes, it is Pinhead that made him, even though he's got like this kind of weird mask while he's doing it.
Yeah, right. And they keep showing I didn't understand why it was so needlessly obscured, like who this was. And when there was a reveal, it wasn't that big of a deal. I don't know. It was strange. Like he was purposely, not shown.
So okay. So they defeat the Furies, and then they want to go. They defeat the Furies by using the lightning bolts from Marty, right?
Yeah, and he's in the egg, right? Or in the egg is like he's created an egg. Or I didn't understand this exactly.
Yeah, so they're right at the tip of the precipice into Mortimame's tomb. So what happens is Marty ends up falling in there with the Furies, and that ends up releasing Mortimame. And she tells them, hey, what happened to Marty and that monster? And she's like, well, they're inside the tomb now, which is a place where life can't be ended or created. So we'll deal with that later.
So they're just going to keep battling each other forever until they do something about it.
Right. Or until, the Harrowers comic book starts, in which case.
Right.
So, yeah. So anyway, we discover that Bunny Benedict, who was taken to hell, it's not really an old lady. She's more like a trans old lady. So Pinhead kind of discovers that. And there's a really goofy page here where Pinhead takes off his mask that he had on while he was creating the Furies. And he just takes that thing off his face and just kind of like sticks his tongue at Bunny.
Yeah.
And isn't that like a weird looking expression for Pinhead?
It is. Yeah. And he gets out a blowtorch like he's going to blowtorch off her man parts.
Yeah, and he says, your eyes will.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, here's the true face of your pain. And he goes like, bleh, with his tongue out.
It's weird to view the true face of your pain, and he's got kind of the golden pins like Hellraiser 3 era.
Yeah. So he's taken off her clothes. He discovers that her bra has padded implants, and he said, well, ha, I see. You've already begun trying to do some reconfiguring. Well, let me help you with that. And he like you said, he grabs a blowtorch, and then, some really weird expressions in this artwork.
Yeah.
But he says, let me start with this part here. And then all of a sudden, Ron Ringwood shows up out of God knows where, riding his bike.
Well, and I think his motorcycle was able to guide him to the right place because he didn't know where to go. But his motorcycle knew where to go.
But how did he get into hell with his motorcycle? Did he go through the portal through which the Furies came?
I think they all did, but he kind of went out ahead. I think
with his bike.
They're all in hell right now.
Right. So this is what they do. The Harrowers go into hell, save someone from the Cenobites, take them back out. Then Mortemame takes them into her like womb of sorts and then rebirths them, and they have 24 hours in their present form before they turn into some other person.
Yeah.
So that way the Cenobites will never be able to find them again. So that's what happens with Bunny, and they rescue Bunny, and then Mortemame rebirths Bunny as a new person.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she explains that to the Cenobites. In the meantime, Merkova is in hell, and she still has the sword, one of the blades of the Boros Huatu. And Pinhead says, hey, let me get that sword out of you. Which, okay, Pinhead, you never take a blade out of someone when they're bleeding, okay? That's not how it works. So he just pulls the blade out, and of course she dies.
Yeah.
Which, again, how do you kill someone that's already dead? Right? It's a Cenobite.
Yeah, because of the sword, I guess.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's like a poison sword. It's got like the essence of Mortemame, so it can hurt the Cenobites. But then you see like Pinhead do the stereotypical look up with tears in your eyes and go, no.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. That crane shot down at him.
Yeah. So there's a shot like that, and he's like, "But I got the Harrower's weapon now, and it's gonna be my revenge."
He's crying too. He's got tears in his eyes.
Yeah. I said that. Yeah, he's crying. So the tears of a Cenobite.
Yeah, I was looking at that crane shot before that. Looking down on him in the body, and then there's the next one. Crazy.
Yeah. So nice ending to that story. Bunny Benedict turns from an old man into a young woman, and she goes off to play with some kids that are playing in a yard. And that's it. And it ends with the general again saying that this time it's war, which he already said it in the other issue, right?
Right.
Like, these guys have declared war on hell, but this time it's really war. Okay.
That was pretend war, but this is the real war.
Right. So this time it's really war.
Yeah.
It's cool. At the end, we have an announcement here, a book ad for Clive Barker's Thief of Always, which is a nice comic book ad here.
Which has been out for a year already, but I don't know. Maybe this is for the paperback or something.
This says here an alternate selection of the Literary Guild, Doubleday Book Club, and Science Fiction Book Club by HarperCollins Publishers.
Oh, okay.
So I guess they were doing those.
The book club edition.
Book club editions. So, okay, that's issue 18. On to issue 19, right?
Yeah. Oh, and there was also a pinup of a similar pinup that showed the Chatterer.
Yeah, they're like thematically connected, just like in the previous issue with the clown.
Yeah.
This one has Chenard and then the Chatterer.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. I like the art.
Yeah, me too. So issue 19. Issue 19.
Yeah, there's two ones with like old-timey 1600s ships. Two stories in this one with that theme, which was a little bit confusing, but not the end of the world, but but we start out with Roulette LeMarchand.
Right, and this takes us back to the Devil's Brigade storyline again, right? It's in Philadelphia.
Yeah, but it's kind of a spin-off of the Devil's Brigade. It shows the after effects of what happened with the imbalance of power. Because of all the killing of the gang leaders and stuff.
By Atkins, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a turf war in Philadelphia. A gang is the Vultures. Vultures are being led by Carlos. There's another gang being led by a guy named Vito. Yeah. So Carlos won't cut a new deal to divide the streets. So it leads to gang war. And I think that at one point during the confrontation between the two gangs, Vito's guys trapped Carlos in the sewers.
Yeah. And I kept getting confused about which one was Carlos and which one was Vito because their art looks similar.
Yes, I have that written here too. And in a hand note I wrote, I said that the two guys are really similar. The only way you can tell them apart is because one of them's wearing a jacket and the other one's wearing
maybe a vest or something.
A vest, I think so.
Or a tank top. I didn't like that. And you're supposed to. One of them's supposed to be like a good guy because he doesn't want any more violence. He's tired of it, and the other one is super ambitious and wants to take over the streets. but inevitably I couldn't keep them straight, and I couldn't. I don't know. It's like, which one is the good guy now? I don't. They're kind of the same.
It is a confusing story in certain parts. This was written by Dean Shreck and was illustrated by Ricardo Villagran. Mm-hmm. So again, another case where the art seems better than the story, which is kind of frustrating. But so yeah, Vito traps Carlos in the sewers, where he is trying to escape these gangsters, and he meets a guy looking for a box. And when Carlos's pursuers go up to the old guy, say, "Hey, did you see a guy go by here?" Then the box opens, and the chains kind of hurt them and take away the old man and leave the box behind. And while the other guys run away, Carlos goes and grabs the box. So he thinks the box is his way to get power, and he challenges Vito for a mano a mano.
Yeah,
and it's a confusing one.
And it's their idea for their final showdown is dumb.
It is really dumb, and it doesn't make any sense. Because
they use the puzzle box as like a Russian roulette, and whoever they blindfold themselves, and whoever does the final like twist or whatever is supposed to get all the chains. But it's like, what makes you think that's gonna work?
Well, it's like the guy who opens the box loses, and then the only winning move is not to play, right? Yeah. Why are they playing?
Yeah, right.
Because he says the box going off, bloody hooks, and all in the loser's kisser. What do we say? The stakes are simple, Vito. We take turns. The one with the brains and the guts to avoid opening the box owns the streets. So if you don't want to open, don't touch it, right? I mean, but not only do they touch it and they try to open it, they do it blindfolded for some reason. And it's like, this doesn't make any sense. This is dumb, okay?
Yeah.
It says, just a few rounds of Russian roulette, but with a twist. The box going off, bloody hooks and all, and the loser's kisser.
I know.
Just like your boys told you, or don't you trust your old man? Okay, and he says, so what do you say, Vito? You man enough or no? And he says, okay, you got it. Yeah. Let's do it. Bring out the box. That's like, again, it makes no sense. And of course, it blows back into Carlos's face, because at one point he's the one touching the box, and he's the one like moving and trying to open it. Like, what are you doing? The one who opens the box loses. But he starts getting these visions, right? He starts getting visions of the box gets into his head, and it's offering him like power, money, freedom, and then he says, "Oh no!" And the other guy says, "Yeah, man, wrong move. You lose." Even though he's blindfolded, he can't see what the other guy's doing. I guess he's going by the guy saying no. And so he opens the box. These Cenobites appear. We've seen some of these, right? Like there's the Cenobite from that first story, The Cannons of Pain.
Yeah.
There's another one from that virtual reality story. And there's the female Cenobite. And there's a monster with like a hook coming out of his head. I don't know what that monster is from. But So the Cenobites appear. Everybody starts running away. And then as they're running away, they keep finding the box. And this box, I think it's from the Carborough Disease Center where the leprosy guy was.
Oh, yeah. It's that weird, like, it looks Christmas colored. And
Yeah. So I like that they went back and they used Cenobites from the other stories and a box from another story and kind of made it more cohesive.
Yeah.
So Carlos sees the box in front of him and as they're running away, and he kicks it. And then when he kicks it, he somehow opens it again, and the Cenobites kind of flicker back, which makes no sense. Like, they already showed up. You already solved the box. Why is kicking the box making the Cenobites appear again?
I know.
Anyway.
I don't like this.
So they say that, of course, we are the Cenobites. We will not be denied. You've summoned us. And says... and then Carlos says something really stupid. He says, "No, I won. God showed me the way. It's my destiny." And he says, "No, you're a fool. When you pray to darkness, it's darkness that answers, and your destiny is hell."
Yeah.
And why is Carlos saying that he didn't open it?
I don't.
He opened it. He's the one who opened it. It just doesn't make any sense. Anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, so of course Carlos ends up being taken by the Cenobites, and he ends up chained in hell and says, "But I didn't open the box. It was in my hand." And the Cenobite says, "Oh, Carlos, It is not the hands that call us. It is desire.
Yeah.
And it's like, God damn it, we just saw him open the box in like 2 pages ago. Why is he saying he didn't open it?
Yeah.
The story is dumb.
It's
okay?
not nonsense.
It's nonsense.
Yeah.
But it kind of makes up for the next story, because the next story is one of the best stories I've ever read in this whole anthology series.
It is really, yeah, in these blue depths lie hell.
Oh, wow. This story was a treat to read, I tell you.
Yeah, I really liked it also.
Yeah.
And like I had said, there were 2 stories that featured a ship, and I thought they were going to be related to each other at first, but they're not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but so this one starts out with oh gosh, I'm trying to remember. This isn't the Mayflower one, right? This is the other one.
No, this is a Spanish galleon, I think.
Yeah.
So it's off the Strait of Florida, and it starts in July 1528. And there was one guy, Captain Protegera, and he was trying to discover some sort of puzzle, some sort of like translate some sort of text. And of course, when the monk on board his boat solves his text, then he actually summons hell. And so the boat is taken by Cenobites, and it comes along with one of my favorite Cenobites from the comic book series, which was Hunger. And he takes over the ship, right? But the captain of the ship refuses to let hell take over, and he says, well, I'm not gonna go by quietly. I'm going to try to get all my gunpowder and blow the ship up and destroy the Cenobites along with it. But Hunger doesn't let him do that, because he actually
freezes time, right?
Yeah, he freezes time. And the story keeps cutting back and forth between 1992 and 1528.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because now we see that one of the descendants from this captain is going to try to explore the depths of the Straits of Florida to see if he can find the boat that his ancestor disappeared on. And I don't know how they find out where the boat sank, because the boat never really sank per se, right? It was just taken by the Cenobites, and there's no record of where the boat was. So anyway, let's pretend like he's going to do an exploratory mission. He's going to be diving around for a few days, and he's going to find the ship.
And while he's on this expedition, his wife is plotting against him with this other woman, right?
Yeah. So she wants to. I think their idea is that when they find the ship, they would split the treasure just 2 ways instead of 3 ways for some reason. Okay, so that's, or maybe she just wants to get rid of him, in which case they want to make it look like an accident when they're diving, that her and her girlfriend will just pull out the regulator and hide the body underwater and just say, oh, he disappeared underwater when he was diving, so it was an accident. Anyway, so we keep seeing back and forward, like I said, what happened with Hunger and the boat in the 1528. And then we see that the explorers go and they do discover the boat, right? They go on an exploration trip and they find the boat. It's at the bottom of the ocean. And so this is the time, right? This is the moment to seize. So the other 2 women approach him and they try taking away his regulator. They grab a knife and they're going to stab him. But all of a sudden Hunger stretches out his arm from the boat hull and he kind of yoinks, pulls them back in, and he takes them
into that frozen moment in time. So now they're a part of he's hoping that that'll change, tip the balance somehow, or change it so that he wins.
Yeah. So, and it's funny because they show up dressed in the costumes of the time, right? The 2 women have these like long dresses, and the other guy, Captain Protegera's descendant, is wearing like this flowery shirt, and it's funny, but yeah. So it's the captain is saying to his descendant, we have to explode the ship, we have to destroy this, help me. And it's like, oh, I don't know, I don't speak Spanish, I'm sorry. But I think at one point it gets to him, there's like, oh, you're saying what's that, lassie? You say we have to blow up the ship? Okay.
It's like, oh, I understand fire. Okay.
Yeah. So
it's like, guessing, right?
Yeah. And he, meanwhile, Hunger is entertaining himself with the other 2 women. and he says, we had to stop this horror, here, blow it up. And so, of course, the two relatives that managed to work together to blow up the ship before Hunger can realize what's happening. And so the ship explodes, and the guy comes over from the water, and he's like, oh, okay, oh, thank God. And he goes on his little ship that he was using to explore, but all of a sudden we see these chains come up from the depths of hell. And, what is implied at the end, right, is that he was taken by Hunger, just like his ancestor was, in a frozen moment in time on a boat.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, really cool. I liked this one a lot. And the art was also really good.
It's kind of a short story, but I think it was nice because it was a dense story. It made sense, which is something that sometimes some of these stories don't make a lot of sense. And the artwork is amazing, and it's just one of the best ones. This is one of those that should show up in the Hellraiser masterpieces, I think.
Yeah. Maybe it did. I did never read those.
Right.
Yeah. And then the next one, Death, Where Is Thy Sting? So this one is another one that involves, the past and a ship coming to America, and
it is the Mayflower, right?
Yeah, it's the Mayflower. And so this guy, he has a curse that everybody in his family disappears on their 25th birthday. So it opens with him and his wife or girlfriend on his 25th birthday, and on the banner he scratched out 25th and put 24 plus 1.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
like that's gonna stave off the curse.
Yes.
And
yeah.
He gets a present in the mail that's a puzzle box, and on the address it says his middle name, which, like, nobody knows my middle name. How did they send this to me?
Yeah, and every descendant from his family has this birthmark on his back that looks like a red diamond.
Yeah, looks like Leviathan.
So it's kind of a contrived story to begin with, but okay.
Yeah.
So it's written by Malcolm Smith, our very own Malcolm Smith.
Yeah, and art by Paul Johnson, right? That did the he did the Jihad.
Jihad. Yeah. That's right. Yeah, I recognize his style. So the reason why everybody disappears on their 25th birthday is because when they were on board the Mayflower, this one guy's son opened up this puzzle box or something, and so before they went on the Mayflower, right? So
so then they got on the Mayflower with their family, hoping to escape, and the Cenobites came and took the parents, and the parents had made a deal, take us instead, not the kid.
Right.
And so they show up on the boat and they take them anyway. But
right. So they didn't want them to take the kids. So like you said, they said, take us instead. But then 2 days later, they got on the Mayflower, and they thought they could escape hell somehow, I guess.
Yeah, right.
Which is like, well, why couldn't the Cenobites just appear on the Mayflower and just take them there? But
right, which they did.
It becomes like this curse that follows the family throughout the generations.
So that's a little bit like not explained, right? I mean, if they made a deal to take the parents, why do they also have this curse on the whole family line? It doesn't.
That is the least of this story's problems.
Yeah.
Because so this is a Harrower story, right? I guess they were sounding to see how they could.
It's like a Harrower spin-off, kind of.
Yeah. It's like a little solo story with Vera Wyshak. And so like you said, the guy got a box in the mail, and then the next we see is his girlfriend in a subway train, like looking at the box, and Vera sees the box and recognizes, oh, that's an element configuration. So she goes over and she says, hey, you shouldn't be playing with that thing, sister. It will take you somewhere you don't like. Yeah. And then the woman says, well, my husband disappeared. And she says, well, if he's just gone into it, it may not be too late. And she all of a sudden pulls out her boomerang, magic boomerang, and cuts a hole to hell, and just takes her there right in the middle of the, subway car. Yeah. Okay, so let's do it. Let's jump in hell and get your husband out.
Yeah.
All right. So interesting. I mean, they do cut back and forth a little bit about, the family aboard the Mayflower and how the Cenobite that appears was called Fulgur, which is one of the Lucky Six. Yeah. And so the hell that they go into looks just like a little meadow or a prairie or something. And there's bees, right? Cenobite bees.
Yeah, and how is Fulgar still alive? Because he was one of the he got put into that Furie or whatever, right?
Yeah, yeah. But we see him in a flashback in the Mayflower times, right?
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
oh, okay. So, but he's not in this. Yeah, it's just the beekeeper Cenobite in this one.
Yeah, but so
atheist or something, I forget.
So anyway, Cenobite bees, dude.
Right.
I mean,
right.
Cenobite bees. Okay, so the Cenobite bees have a diamond shape on their stinger, and their stinger is enormous, and they really really hurt, and all the members of this family clan are in this kind of meadow, and they keep getting stung by these bees all the time, and they're stuck on the ground like they're trees or something.
And they have roots that lead back to a massive tree and the tree has their parents or has their ancestors.
So it's a literal family tree, right?
Right, yeah.
Okay, so it's like it goes back to the patriarch. So he's like the big tree, and I'm Jesus Christ, I guess like Aparius, beekeeper of hell. He's the stupidest looking Cenobite I have ever seen in this comic book.
Yeah, he is dumb. He's got this, and she's like, "It's a good thing you have this super long neck," and she throws her boomerang and cuts his head off.
Because he's got this. Okay, so you've seen those ladies in Africa that do the metal necklaces that kind of stretch their neck a little bit, and so this guy has that, but is like extreme. So he's got like a neck that's maybe like a foot long, and he's walking around
or like 2 or 3 feet.
And he's just walking around looking like a big Cenobite giraffe, I guess.
Yeah.
And
he's got screens over his eyes and nose and
oh
mouth.
My God, dude. Oh my God. Like that's the stupidest part. It's like he's got screens over his eyes and nose and mouth.
Like a beekeeper would have a screen that covered their whole face.
I mean, wow.
Dumb.
Like this is dumb. This is dumb. Anyway, so she of course throws the boomerang blade and cuts his neck off, and then that's it. That's it for that Cenobite. He literally is on the story for like 3 panels. One, he's walking. The other is saying,
"Yeah, but you
cannot escape."
They built him up a lot. There's like oh no, what do we do if the beekeeper gets here? And then, oh no, he's here. And then she's like, oh, throws the boomerang.
He's got his own corner of hell. He's got his own like sub corner of hell where it's like it's like a meadow or something. And it's like he literally just is in the story for 3 panels. He's dead. That's it. Boom. It's more of a challenge for her to find out how to like get these lost souls free.
Yeah.
But then, of course, she does it, and
she uses her blood to burn their roots away.
Yeah, and then she kind of makes the bees go into like the beekeeper's body, I guess somehow. Yeah. She took the queen bee, stuck the queen bee up the dead Cenobite's neck, and all the other bees just go into it. Yeah. So okay, so much for the Cenobite bees. Yeah. So she gets to save an entire clan of people. Who knows how many people she saved, but we see this thing.
A lot.
Looks like Morty Mama is going to have to put a lot of people into her womb that day.
Right.
Right. So all these people are just going to hang around for 12 hours. And, of course, this woman gets her fiancé back. They make love one last time. And I kid you not, he turns into a fucking bee.
Yeah, well, and then later he's like a swarm of bees, which is like, well, which is it? Is he a bee or is he like 100,000 bees?
So Morty Mame would turn people into a different form after 12 hours on Earth after they're reborn. So he turns into a bee.
Yeah.
And he looks almost like he turns into a Cenobite bee, but I can't be sure. Anyway, so she's pregnant with him and she gives birth. And then all of a sudden it's like, there's a swarm of bees coming through the hospital window. My baby. Yeah. And then it's just him saying, Katie, it's me, all of us. You've made me so happy. I'll always love you. And then he just disappears. With a nurse saying, oh, my God, cover the baby. And it's like, okay, it's just Daddy. He came to say goodbye.
Yeah, but she still screamed in the panel before. Like, wouldn't she recognize that he had turned into... Oh, yeah, he told her to close her eyes.
Yeah.
Which is like, why tell her that? Don't you want her to recognize you when you come back?
Okay, some of these stories are just dumb. And this one, Cenobite to me is like the worst of the whole story. Is like this, I'm just a Cenobite beekeeper.
I did like the idea of the parents' tree, the family tree and stuff, and the roots connecting each other, and they're buried up to their necks. Yeah, I thought that part was interesting, but all the lead up, it either didn't make any sense or it was dumb.
Yeah, and I like this subset of hell being like this meadow where people are being tortured, like buried on the ground by Cenobite bees. Although Cenobite bees, just call them bees, okay? Just call them hell bees or something. Yeah. I mean, they don't have to be Cenobite bees. That's just kind of a silly name to give them.
That's true. That's a good point.
But it's very Dante's Inferno, right?
Right.
Yeah, just totally. like the people who are
the suicides who turn into trees.
Trees, right? Yeah. So that's cool. So at the end, we have an afterword by Mark McLaurin where he's saying that, okay, the end is here. Now I'm going to bring in a new editor, David Wall. Issue number 20 was the last one. So I guess this guy didn't have a lot of work to do. He's basically thanking everybody who worked on the book and Clive Barker for his guidance.
Talks about Hyperkind and Ectokid and Hokum and Hex, Saint Sitter, the Harrowers, and the Barkerverse. And it's interesting, though. I wonder why Hellraiser was coming to an end. I guess we'll find out next time.
Maybe we'll find out more about this. Maybe the sales just weren't that good. Maybe they just wanted to focus on the Barkerverse. So,
Right.
I mean,
Marvel was really spreading themselves thin, and Clive Barker was a part of it, with having so many comics.
Just remember that at one point, Marvel in the early 90s had to declare technical bankruptcy. So,
So they had probably, I'm sure there was some executive saying, okay, let's look at everything that we've got. And they're like, Jesus Christ, how many comic books did you give Clive Barker?
Yeah. So, thanks for listening to our Hellraiser Comics part 6. Okay, so next up we're going to be, like you mentioned, talking about the part 7, and there may be some interviews coming up.
Yeah.
And, so stay tuned for that.
Yeah, looking forward to it. And this podcast, having no beginning, will have no end. Find the show notes for this episode and join the discussion over at www.clivebarkercast.com, where we have news and links to all the ways you can connect with us. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and every other place you can find podcasts. The Clive Barker Podcast is an independent editorial podcast and news blog that is not affiliated with or under contract by Seraphim Inc. This is a labor of love by the fans for the fans.
Thanks for listening.